Most interesting thing in impact, Portugal launches an intergenerational justice index, and it's the first of its kind in the country. And it's going to be game-changing for programs, services, funding, and public policy. It's developed by Portugal's Institute for Public Policy and supported by the Calouste Gulbenkian Foundation. Now, it's an annual index and looks deeply at 7 different dimensions: housing, labor market, environment, public finances, health, inequality, and poverty. Now, why is this significant? I'll give you 3 reasons. The first has to do with realization. Portugal has realized their responsibility to the emerging future and to future generations. Not too long ago, Canada's Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, called the country's housing crisis as intergenerational injustice. And that's because there was no mapping of the intergenerational effects of lack of housing, the expectations of home ownership, rising house prices, and the relationship between housing and intergenerational social determinants of health. Let's be clear, though, Canada does not have an intergenerational justice index. And you can extend this all to a whole range of complex societal challenges we're grappling with. We have little idea of the intergenerational effects of the mental health crisis, or the food insecurity crisis, or even of those who are suffering from long COVID. Even within the social impact world, there is no deep understanding of the intergenerational consequences and effects of the programs and services being funded and delivered. And the biggest casualty are future peoples and the future health of the planet. Here's my second point, and it has to do with accountability. Imagine if the next generation could have their voices heard in today's political and civil society debates. If there was a way to represent their interests and ensure that their futures were not trampled on by short-termism that rules today's political, corporate, and civil society institutions. Imagine if we had the legal mechanisms to guarantee the rights and well-being of future generations. Now, how do Canada's social purpose organizations and funders fare when it comes to centering intergenerational equity? There is no evidence of accountability for intergenerational justice. So it's convenient. We don't actually know. What we do know, though, is the sophistication of the work of social purpose organizations has evolved significantly. As an example, community services organizations have evolved from giving vulnerable people shelter and basic support to also identifying who is and who isn't vulnerable. So now we have a new problem. What are the intergenerational consequences and externalities of social services, social programs, community organizations? How is your work and your programs creating intergenerational harm? You could be a grant maker running a granting program for the arts, or an INGO running a poverty alleviation program in Kenya, or a community services organization running a drop-in social program for people with mental illness. The intergenerational externalities of social purpose organizations is a massive blind spot whose effects are compounding. Think about it for a second. And now there's documented research from across the globe of the intergenerational transmission of addictions, of anxiety and depression, of undernutrition. This is absurd. And there's no accountability. Here's my last point, and that has to do with action. So what will it take for Canada to build an intergenerational justice index? We're living at a time where we bear the intergenerational consequences of the services and systems we work in. Intergenerational justice is not part of anyone's to-do yet. It still remains a nice to-do, kind of like dessert at the end of a meal. Sure, it's great to have, but you don't really need it. The social impact world has to understand and confront the intergenerational harms of actions and inactions. And there is ample evidence of our dysfunctions to show how irresponsible our current path truly is. Few organizations have the mindset, the methods, and the practice to center intergenerational justice in their governance, in their strategic plans, in their programs and services, fundraising, grant making. So now is the time to pool our collective imagination and embark on intergenerational justice. That's the most interesting thing in impact. See you again soon.